What's up, Packer fans? I'm Nerai Chapek, host of Portland Packers podcast. On this week's episode, we break down the game that was in Los Angeles on Sunday, the strangeness that is happening with Romeo Doubs, the mystery, if you will. And we look forward to the Arizona Cardinals. We want to get on a win streak moving forward and try to carry some momentum before we have to face off against the Houston Texans. So, guys, grab yourself a drink. It is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. What do you know, Christian? Are those the victory shades? Those are the victory shades. Those are like Aaron Jones victory shades, though. Yeah. Did you get them? Is your mic working? Because
It is working.
My mic is hopefully working.
It is working. No, these are my new victory shades. I wore them all day Monday. Didn't even take them off in the office. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't wear them on Monday. No, These are my new victory shades for Packers being 3-2, beating the Rams.
That doesn't. Oh, they actually say Packers.
Yeah, they're Zumba.
Wow. You know, you said Packers are 3-2, and that put a pit in my stomach.
Yeah,
How are you feeling after 5 weeks of the NFL season? I'm genuinely curious.
If you're gonna go 15-2, you have to lose 2 at some point. Right?
Okay. Yeah, you're the optimist compared to both of us.
You know, the start of that game and throughout the game, there are some things that need to be addressed, I think. There's poor decision-making, sloppy play, lots of penalties. There's definitely some things that need to be cleaned up. But even on the broadcast in the game against the Rams, they put up a graphic that showed Packers are the youngest team in the league still. Rams are the second youngest team in the league, but Packers are still the youngest team in the league, and there's a lot of learning that is still to be done with this team. And I think it's a good thing that they're young and growing together, and I think it's only going to get better as the season goes on. The couple of weeks with Jordan Love out put a hitch in things because obviously he's the leader of the team, and he had to sit out for a couple of weeks, and that kind of throws a wrench in everything. And now that he's been back for a couple of weeks, hopefully they can start getting back into the groove and growing together as a team again and just keep getting better and better as the season goes on.
Yeah. Let me start with, if you're watching this video, thank you so much for watching this video. If you didn't watch last week, I don't blame you because I had mic problems. I had to do some sort of crazy editing and the quality was bad. That's not the product I want to put out there. So if you're here right now, I just want to say thank you for being here. But I should have put that in right away off the bat, but you threw on those shades and it just threw me for an absolute
They do that.
loop. Yep,
It's the mirror effect. It's the mirror effect, right?
So last week I was confident. If you made it through any of last week's episode and saw any of the score predictions, I was feeling very confident. I think it was like 38-10, I think was where my score prediction was going to be. Because I felt like it was time. Love's back. In his second game, he looked good in the second half against the Vikings. It just kind of felt like, okay, this is where we're going to start to get our momentum back. We're facing a banged up Rams team. And clearly that hasn't happened yet. And I don't know why, but I'm frustrated that it hasn't happened yet. And I'm not sure if I'm hanging on to a false belief of what this team can be. Now, let me not get ahead of myself too far here because they're performing well in the power rankings on, NFL.com, ESPN, wherever you get your power rankings. They're still like a top 10 team. So it seems like they're getting recognition or the NFL and talking heads out there are taking them seriously. But coming off of last year and essentially bringing back the same core, I kind of felt like by now we would kind of maybe start clicking. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm surprised it didn't happen against the Rams. And when that game ended, it was just kind of like a exhale. I don't know if you had that feeling either, but it was like, that game was way closer than it probably should have been. The Packers never really took control of it at any point. And yes, it is the youngest team in the NFL. I have gone on the record of saying that Jordan Love is going to have his growing pains throughout the first part of this season. with Malik Willis playing 2 games and Jordan Love getting hurt and we haven't had a fully healthy team. Watson was out, Doubs is out. We'll get to that here in a little bit. I don't really know what to think of this team. I don't think I'm alone as a Packers fan. I think we have high expectations. I think that the potential's there. We're seeing what they're doing across the border in Minnesota, where they're just walloping teams. A lot of people ask me about the game on Monday morning. I was at a loss for words, and I still kind of find myself at a loss for words. But hey, we got a victory out of it. To your point, we're 3-2. I'd rather get the victory and kind of figure this out as we go versus losing games. But something's just not sitting right with me so far after 5 weeks, and I just can't put my finger on it quite what it is.
I agree.
Am I crazy?
I agree. Nope, you're not crazy. I feel the same way. It's these last few weeks have felt kind of iffy. Just not quite sure what's going on and how the game's going to go. I agree. It feels like they should be playing better than they have been. Granted, they've gotten 3 wins. Just the sloppy play, the penalties, the turnovers. There's too much of that going on for my liking, right? You want to see that stuff get cleaned up. And again, I feel like the Jordan Love injury maybe kind of put a hitch in that cleanup process. Because, you start the season in week 1, you expect issues like that. You expect penalties, you expect poor decisions, you expect growing pains in the first couple of weeks. But with Jordan Love getting injured week 1, it's almost like they kind of had to start over with those growing pains when he came back. And like we talked about last week, he came back obviously not completely healthy. Now this week against the Rams, he looked healthy to me. There wasn't any point in time that I noticed that he was hesitant or not as mobile as he normally is. So I think this week he's fully healthy and getting back into the swing of things. But it may have just taken this last week to get some of those uglies out, get those penalties out, get those poor decisions out. He made those poor decisions in the first half, but the second half he turned it around and looked very good. So it's just a matter of that continuing through practice, continuing on into the next week and the next week and the next week, and continuing to grow.
The thought that comes to me is when Malik Willis was quarterback, and believe me, he's not going to take over Jordan Love's position, but they had game plans, and I got so excited in that Colts game and versus the Tennessee Titans where I'm like, you get Jordan Love in this offense, and with that kind of game planning, the sky's the limit. And we haven't seen that against Minnesota, and we didn't see it against the LA Rams. It kind of seems like it's a tale of 2 offenses almost, one with Malik Willis and a game plan there, it seems like the offensive line blocks a little bit better. It seems like the running backs run a little bit harder. I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy. And then you have this Jordan Love offense where obviously you want to pass the ball and you have that deep threat ability out of Jordan Love. But I don't know how Matt LaFleur is going to make this thing come together, or if it will come together and kind of what I see as a dream offense, but it just hasn't come yet, and maybe it'll come against the Arizona Cardinals. So yes, the Packers move to 3-2 in the season. They beat the Rams 24-19. I got just a couple of topics, but when I say a couple, I have like 8, but we don't have to talk about all of them. I'll let you chime in. I'm sure you got some things you want to talk about. I think first and foremost, we have to discuss what's going on with Romeo Doubs. Headlines, what came out Friday, I feel like. He missed practice on Thursday. And they actually, from what I can see, they should put an asterisk here or something, a banner on the bottom so a lot of this is rumor and speculation because Matt LaFleur has been tight-lipped on this. I have not seen really any concrete reports of what happened. Maybe we'll get an answer from Doubs when he's in his locker room and does an interview, but didn't show up to practice on Thursday. I read a report that they actually had to send someone over to his house to check on him to see if he was okay because he wasn't responding to phone call or text messages. He didn't go to practice on Friday. Packers ultimately suspend him. What the hell is going on with Romeo Doubs? Because with me, have you watched as many of his interviews, locker room interviews, maybe as I have over the last 2-3 seasons? Like, this guy sits at the locker room real low, talks. He's humble as can be. Underdog sort of a personality where he got all this attention, especially late last season. He's on the Up and Adams show and doing NFL Network interviews and stuff like that. I don't know if it's got to his head, but talk is that he doesn't feel like he'd like the game plan heading into that Rams game. Sounds like he doesn't feel like he's getting enough opportunities. I just don't know where it's coming from, and I'm concerned. It just took me by surprise from this guy.
Yeah, and it's really all about point of view. From our point of view, the numbers show that he has the second most targets of any receiver. But he could be referring to, specific plays that are designed for the ball to go to him, that type of thing. And it's all speculation. We don't know for sure until we hear it from him. He could have other things going on too. Like for him to not show up at all, not answer his phone, not answer text messages, that's more of a concern to me. Like if I was a coach or a fellow teammate, my concern would be with, is he okay as a person, not as
Right.
the wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers? Is he okay as a person? Because that's the type of stuff that happens when people are having mental health issues. They shut down, they don't show up, don't answer
Yep.
the phone. So yeah, that's where my concern would be. Now, the rumors or the speculation that he's upset with his role on the team, again, we don't know that for sure. Someone would have to come out and say that's why he didn't show up to practice for me to say, okay, now my concern is with, is he over dramatizing things? Is he making a big deal out of nothing? But first, let's figure out if he's okay, which it sounds like they did meet with him, and it sounds like the meeting went well. They had a good conversation, and he's going to be back at practice this week. So hopefully that's it. Hopefully, we just move on with the rest of the season. He's at practice, he's in games, and he's catching balls from Jordan Love throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, and if you remember back in last season with what happened with Jair Alexander, we kind of knew like he went out on the field, he wasn't supposed to go on the field, and that's part of the reason why the Packers suspended him for a game, and that was a big game. That was Week 17 against the Minnesota Vikings. They pulled Jair out of that game. They're not afraid to sacrifice star player being on the field for organizational benefits and the culture. But yeah, it's just super surprising. People were coming to me asking me questions about it. I'm as lost as everyone else. And to your point, it's pure speculation. And yeah, hopefully the guy's all right. Of all the players on the roster, he would have been one of the last ones that I would have thought would have been upset about catches or whatever the case may be. So yeah, well, maybe there'll be some layers to it. Again, we record on Tuesday nights. He is expected to be at practice on Wednesday. So by the time this video airs on Thursday morning, it might be all harps and vaginas at that point, right?
Yeah. One thing I found a little ridiculous with the whole situation was, as soon as the rumors, again, they're all rumors or speculation.
Yep.
The rumors came out that he was frustrated with his role on the team. Right away, I started seeing notifications that there's these teams that are contacting the Packers about taking him on trade. Slow down.
Yep.
Let the Packers organization figure out what's going on first. And if at that point he's upset and doesn't want to play for the Packers anymore, okay, then we consider, what the options are as far as trades or what they do. But it just felt like there was no empathy from other teams. Right away, it was like, oh, we'll take him. We'll give you this.
It's a business.
Right.
It is a business. And yeah, the rumor mill fires up real hot when stuff like this goes down. So
Yeah.
I'll move on to an exciting player. The next person that I'd like to talk about is Sir Xavier McKinney. So I love this thing. I got this at the Packers practice I went through a couple weeks ago. I'm surprised my child has not broke this one yet. They broke the other one that we had. But 5 interceptions in 5 games. Should have been 6. He had the possibility of that 6th interception that went through his hands.
That was all on him too. He totally should have caught that.
Yep. Also had a fumble recovery on Sunday against the Rams. But probably the biggest statistic that I want to pull out with this guy, the streak continues. I did not think we'd make it 5 weeks with an interception every single game, but
Leads the
there
league.
are only 4 other teams, Christian, that have more interceptions than 5. Teams, not players, teams. So the Bears have 6 interceptions total, Steelers at 6, the Saints at 7, and the Vikings at 11. And yes, if you want to count the Packers, they're at 9 total interceptions for the season, but he is playing out of his goddamn mind, and I am enjoying every second of it.
Yeah, and 1 or 2 of them may have been gimmies, like just, ball kind of fell in his lap, but majority of them have been just high football IQ plays, jumping routes. A lot of them he's coming from, the passes going to the sideline. He's coming from the center of the field where the quarterback didn't even expect him to be there, and he's coming out of nowhere, taking it away. Yeah, it's been fun to watch. Has it ever happened before where player has gotten at least 1 interception every game of the season? I doubt it.
No.
That'd be pretty wild. It's very unlikely that he continues that streak, but 5 games, he's found a way. He's 5 for 5.
Let's move on to the next topic real quick. I'll see if I can find that statistic. I'll let you kick it off. Tucker Kraft is the next person I want to talk to because he had a hell of a game on Sunday. Bounce back game, especially after coming off of a rough performance against Minnesota. The previous week, he had that fumble late in the game. To bounce back, have the performance that he did. I was a firm believer that Musgrave would be the tight end that would shine on this offense. I'm not hearing Musgrave's name a whole lot. It seems like Kraft is the guy, and it seems like the sky's the limit with this guy as well.
Yeah, he really bounced back from that mistake in the Vikings game, and Matt LaFleur came out in the last few days here and had nothing but good things to say about Tucker Kraft, about how hard he works and how good of a person he is. So that's always good to see on the team. But yeah, he really broke open that game. Packers go into halftime kind of down on themselves, and that big touchdown catch and run that he had, nobody was going to stop him. He didn't have a whole lot of people in front of him, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I don't think it would have mattered if there was 5 defenders in front of him. He was going to bulldoze all of them over. So it is fun to watch him bounce back and have such a big game. And yeah, we talked about it in preseason. Jordan Love's got so many pass catchers that he can trust out on that offense. So, and Tucker Kraft is just one of them. And talking about Musgraves, I think he's fully capable. It's just been Kraft with the hot hand. I think Musgrave has maybe a couple of catches so far on the season. So we may see Musgrave get involved a little bit more as the season goes on. But right now it's Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, he officially finishes the game with 4 receptions, 88 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Circling back on interceptions, you ever heard of the guy named Night Train Lane?
Well, Night Train Lane?
Yeah, apparently the 1952 season he played for the Los Angeles, I'd assume the Rams back in 1952. Night Train Lane had 14 interceptions. I swear to God, this is from Stat News, okay? I feel like I'm looking at like some Madden webpage right now. Where it's like,
there's no way his real name is Night Train. Like, that's got to be a nickname, right?
Night Train Lane. No, it was the Los Angeles Cardinals back in 1952.
That's what I was going to say, actually.
There you go.
Say that.
Yep. Played 14 seasons for the Lions, Cardinals, and Rams. I think this offseason we'll have to do a whole biopic piece on Night Train Lane. So apparently, they only played 12 games back then. He had 14 interceptions. So if that's a real person, good on him. Coming in second with 13 interceptions in 16 games is Lester Hayes for the Oakland Raiders. That was back in 1980. So outside of Night Train Lane, nobody's done it every single game.
Night Train Lane. What a name. What a name.
Evan Williams is the next player that I want to talk about. So he played all 78 snaps on Sunday against the Rams, and he was a key defender in that final stop of the game. He got a little bit turned around earlier on in the game, and I believe he either gave up a big gain or gave up a touchdown, and it's kind of like a rookie mistake. But outside of that, to play all 78 snaps, and remember, this is the guy that's supposed to be behind Bullard, and Bullard still looks great out there. He's getting more snaps, getting more opportunities, flying around the field. Stafford felt like he could be the target to go after on that final 4th down that they had. was able, and it kind of looked like they might throw a flag on the initial play, but when they went back to the replay, it was perfect defense by him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to see some of these rookies step up. To curtail it before I get your thoughts, because it just kind of came to me, between him, Cooper's had an impact already on this defense. Bullard's have an impact already on this defense. We've got 3 stout rookies who have came into the fold, and they're playing very well. So I had to give some shout out and some love to Evan Williams, the unsung hero of Sunday.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to say. You kind of hit it all. That play at the end of the game was the biggest one, and I specifically remember pointing out to my father-in-law, who I was watching the game with. I was like, "Oh yeah, hey, that's that guy that's that rookie that played well in preseason and kind of made his way to the starting lineup through the preseason." There's not much else to say. He's playing well.
Well, I think you might have some more to say on this one, because for the 70 people that watched our video last week, your X factor was all about Jordan Love's decision making.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the Hail Mary to Reed. Good decision, bad decision?
Terrible decision.
Okay.
Terrible decision. I don't know how he caught that ball. As soon as it went up and the camera panned over, there's literally 3 defenders around Jaden Reed. I'm like,
yeah,
right away, I'm looking away. It's going to be an interception. I didn't look away. I watched it. But right away, I was like, oh, it's going to get picked off. This is an easy pick. No problem. And then the ball comes down. They all go to the ground, and I don't see the ball bounce anywhere. I don't see a defender with the ball. I'm like, no way he caught that. There's no way. And have you seen like the still images of the catch and everything? He's got like a defender covering his face, and I don't know, man. That's all Jaden Reed. That was obviously Jordan Love had to get it there, but I still think it was a dumb decision. It was a bad pass or a bad decision to throw it there.
Larry McCarron interviewed Matt LaFleur. You know, he does his after the game one-on-one with the coach, and he's like, that play, what do you think of that play to Jalen Reed? And Matt was like, yeah, it was a play. Even Matt was like, that was a triple coverage, not a smart decision, but my God, he came down with the ball, and that made up for it. But it did not work so well on the late pick 6 late in the second quarter. That's one of those decision makers. What are your thoughts on that?
And that one, again, I was watching it with my father-in-law. I have no idea if he has I don't even know if he knows that I do a podcast, but he's probably, so I don't know if he's going to watch this, but so my father-in-law, right away, he's like, well, that was the dumbest decision. That was the last thing that you should do. I understand what Jordan Love was trying to do. He pass block protection was busted. Someone made a mistake, left that one defender unblocked, and Love was not expecting that, obviously. And to avoid the safety, he was trying to just throw it away. If you're going to do that, you gotta be a little bit more careful on where you throw it. That was an awful way to end the half. I know it wasn't the very end of the half, but an awful way to go into halftime with such a unnecessary negative, you know?
That it is a tough one. What's interesting, there's a lot of interesting things about that specific play. Yes, the defender gets through. Jordan, like, he doesn't tackle Jordan Love though, right? He just kind of gives him like a really hard shove,
right?
Which is kind of an interesting thing that you wouldn't expect. You think he'd just go for the sack. So Jordan Love is stumbling a little bit. And if you look at the right angle, I mean, Kraft, I believe, was the target there, and he was running and kind of stopped right as Love threw the ball.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help anything. I mean, I get it. You don't want to take the safety, then you have to punt the ball back over to LA. I mean, luckily it's its first pick 6, and hopefully the last one we'll see of this year. I'm sure it won't be the last one of his career, but it was, I was thinking of Jordan Love decision-making quite frequently throughout that first half.
Me too.
Me too. And that specific one put us down 7-13. But afterwards, we'll get onto the positive sides from Jordan Love. Afterwards, he decides to make 9 straight completions. And his next 3 possessions, so to end the second half, they're able to get down the field to kick a field goal. And then the next 2 possessions to start the second half, no incomplete passes, went 9 for 9. One of them was the 66-yard touchdown to Kraft. The next one was the other touchdown to Kraft. Was able to bounce back, was able to have that composure, brush it off, put some drives together. So he's capable of doing smart things and great things, but it's that young quarterback. He's still a young quarterback, and he's trying to make a play. And I was listening, I won't take the credit for this. I was listening to podcasts on my way home from work tonight from Packers.com. So, and one thing that they brought up, and I think it's kind of an interesting point, is that Jordan Love has a lot more Brett Favre characteristics than he has Aaron Rodgers characteristics. And as much as we love Brett Favre, that gunslinger mentality can hurt a lot of times too, right? So it'll be interesting to see how he grows and evolves and what Tom Clements can do to try and shape him and maybe help with the better decision making. We look back at how last season ended with a bad decision thrown across the field, across your body. It'll be interesting to see how he evolves, but he's definitely a mixture of both of them with his own characteristics sprinkled on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting just to see if he can shake off some of that, or if that's just ultimately who he's going to be. That Hail Mary bomb is a Brett Favre throw. That's a Brett Favre decision more than anything, right? So I suggest the rest of you watching, I'm going to be kind of watching this more throughout the season and watching him evolve into a quarterback, and to see kind of, he's got a hell of an arm, but that can also hurt you in some cases too.
Yeah. And I guess I've never really thought of that before, but I agree. I can see that comparison for sure. But I think what is going to be the difference maker is Brett Favre is a legend, an NFL legend. Obviously, he's in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Packard Hall of Fame. But Brett Favre never really got away from those tendencies, the poor decision making, the deep ball whenever he got a chance, or in the wrong situation, just throw the deep ball. He never got away from that throughout his entire career. So for Jordan Love, obviously Jordan Love is young, and it makes sense that he may have that mentality now, but it's just a matter of, is he going to mature and grow and kind of get away from those tendencies as his career goes on? So it's, and I don't know which is the right answer, right? Because obviously we want to see better decision making, less interceptions, but also, as I said, Brett Favre is a Hall of Famer. So
you take the good with the bad with Brett Favre.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he progresses throughout his career, and if that decision making changes. I hope it does. It's frustrating seeing, as soon as he releases the ball, sometimes it's like, why are you doing that? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, last season he finished with 32 touchdowns and only 11 interceptions. So far, through 3 games, he's got 8 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So definitely has a little bit of work to do if he's going to take a run at that MVP. He's definitely going to turn it on here sometime sooner than later.
Yeah, and I've been thinking a lot about the way Jordan Love has played, and I'm almost curious if he's in his own head a little bit. He got this big contract to start the season. He held in, right? He held in during the preseason, and now he's got the big contract. He's the guy in Green Bay, and I wonder if he's in his own head a little bit. The injury doesn't help. The injury in week 1 and then having to sit out for the next couple of weeks, I feel like that definitely didn't help him kind of calm those nerves, calm that expectation of himself to be the hero, to be the star. So hopefully moving on to week 6, hopefully those jitters, hopefully those nerves, hopefully he gets out of his own head and calms down a little bit, starts making some good decisions like we know he can. You just brought up how many touchdowns versus interceptions he had last season.
Get back to it. Last topic I'll talk about before we head on to the Arizona Cardinals is third down conversions. So the official stat line from Sunday, they finished 1 for 8 on third down. They did not convert their first third down conversion until 10 minutes and 42 seconds left in the fourth quarter. That was a Jordan Love 12-yard scramble on 3rd and 12. That's the only third down that they picked up the entire game. As far as the other third downs, they had a 3rd and 7 that ended in a sack, a 3rd and 2. That was a drop by Reed. That was after that beautiful Hail Mary catch that he came down with. He turned his head too early and dropped that one. There was a 3rd and 14. That was a 3rd and 14 because there was a holding penalty on Heat. That was a 5-yard catch by Kraft, not enough yards. 3rd and 12. That was the pick six that ended up in the end zone. 3rd and 26, a 10-yard catch by Wicks, and 3rd and 15 was a false start. Then a negative 9-yard pass that was a fumble pass that rolled backwards. That was ugly too. A lot of ugly. And then finally a 3rd and 10 that was an incomplete pass to Wicks. So we've seen, I think this was their biggest problem. Clearly the stats horrendous, but this was their biggest problem when we look back to Sunday's game, and specifically is that they were never able to pick up any momentum throughout that entire game. And yeah, they put 3 consecutive possessions together where they had field goal, touchdown. But outside of that, it was shooting themselves in the foot, whether it was a penalty that was setting them back and making it 3rd and longer than it had to be, or it was drop passes, or just they never could get into any swing of momentum. And that's what they had the first half against the Vikings 2 weeks ago. And then finally in the second half against the Vikings, they started putting stuff together and making things happen. But ugly trend. That's my final asterisk on Sunday is obviously they got to clean up 3rd down conversions, but that's really bad. That's really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and you pointed out that a couple of those failed 3rd downs were due to penalties. I think penalties need to get cleaned up, and then, this is kind of a decent way to segue into week 6, but ultimately the trenches for the Packers, the offensive line, defensive line, did not play well this week 5. They didn't play very well in week 4 either. I want to see a little bit more out of specifically our offensive line. Defensive line has got to stop the run. The run game is where teams are able to build that momentum, some chunk runs, which puts the defense on their heels. They can't just sit back and wait for the pass play. And both against the Vikings and against the Rams, Josh Jacobs in that run game just were not able to get going. I've heard criticism of Josh Jacobs being the reason why, it just seems like he's slow or, doesn't have it anymore. But ultimately, I think it comes to the run blocking, which is going to be important in this next game. They gotta clean up the penalties, and they gotta run block better.
I would agree. It's not a Josh Jacobs problem. It seems like when they needed or knew they had to block well for the run against the Colts and the Titans, even to an extent, like he was getting running lanes and he was able to break free and go. On the defensive line side of things, it was my final thing that I wanted to bring up was just the Packers do have the 6th highest total sacks for the season, or through 5 weeks, with 16 total sacks. But what's really surprising is that it's not Gary. Rashawn Gary has 1 sack this season. Van Ness has 1 sack this season. Kenny Clark has 0 sacks this season. Devontae Wyatt leads the team with 3, and he was out last week against the Rams. And then Preston Smith has 2.5. He's in 2nd place. Finding opportunities with like a Cooper rushing in there, Nixon rushing in there, whatever, a Bullard rushing in there. So they're finding opportunities there to try and make that pass rush happen. But the whole purpose of this 4-3 defense is that you're supposed to get pressure off of those 4 guys on that defensive line. That opens up so many possibilities for the back end. And I'm not necessarily saying the defense is playing poorly, because they're not. They're top 15 defense so far to start the season. But it's really odd to see one of our most talented, best pass rushers on the team with only 1 sack through 5 games. And I wonder if we'll start to see him turn a corner. Every time I watched him rush on Sunday against the Rams, he was going so far wide around the quarterback. I don't know. We need to get better production out of our star player, I would think, on that defensive line.
Yeah, that's something that I noted as well. We need to see some more pressure, some more sacks out of those pass rushers, specifically pass rushers, which is, obviously you mentioned that Wyatt has the most sacks on the team. I've commented before that it's great that he's getting sacks. That's awesome. But that's not his main role on that defense. His main role is run stopping. is plugging up that middle so they can't run right up the gut. The pass rush is the responsibility of Gary, Preston Smith, Luke Vaness. Like I wrote this down too. We got to see some more out of them. And it may be some growing pains with the new scheme, getting used to things. They're being taught different things. They're being told different ways to do their job than they're used to. So maybe it's some growing pains, but we're going into week 6. You gotta figure it out and gotta get pressure on the quarterback. That's going to be big. Again, moving into week 6, talking about the Cardinals and Kyler Murray. That's going to be a key to this game, is getting pressure on Kyler Murray. Pressure and contain. But we can dive into that a little bit deeper as we get through the preview.
Well, let's get through it. So the Cardinals enter week 6, head to Lambeau Field with an overall record of 2-3. And this is a really hard team to gauge. Over time, we'll talk about your Houston Texans and how that's your non-Packers team that you continually just have. I don't know what it is, but you just feel like you're going to win every single week. That's been me and the Cardinals up to this point. I just felt like I just feel like this team, I don't really want to ever bet against them because I think that they can show up and perform. They lose week 1 against Buffalo 28-34. Then they face the Rams in week 2 and absolutely destroy them 41-10. Hell of a performance. So I'm like, okay, there's that Cardinals team I'm looking for. They lose back-to-back games to Detroit and Washington, which we are learning both Detroit and now Washington are pretty solid teams this early on in the season. Then they managed to head out to San Francisco and beat the 49ers. I really wanted to take Arizona last week. I didn't. I'm on that whole 49ers are supposed to be good train. So this is an up and down team. Kyler Murray, who was off all of last season, correct? So he's kind of coming back.
Yeah.
He was pretty hot before he got injured. So far, Kyler Murray's season stats, so he's 94 for 138. He has a 68% completion percentage. He has 7 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and an overall quarterback rating of 99.1. So he's playing actually better than what Jordan Love has played so far in his 3 games. He's just an absolute stud at wide receiver and Marvin Harrison Jr. And we've talked about in previous weeks, in our overtime episodes, that he probably relies on Harrison Jr. a little bit too much where he forces him the ball. And then James Conner, you can't look past him. He's a great, solid running back, and he has 379 total rushing yards through the first 5 weeks. He's averaging somewhere right around that 70 to 80 yards a game. A really tough team to try and put a finger on it as far as what team's going to actually show up on Sunday and play the Packers. We skipped over penalties on the Packers side of things. They rank awful in the amount of penalties. The one thing the Arizona Cardinals are doing well, they have the fewest penalties out of any team in the NFL, so they're playing smart. 19 total penalties on the season, and that's coaching, and that's not hurting them or limiting them in some of these games. The Packers opened this game as a 5.5-point favorite against the Cardinals, which is surprising. And the pundits around the NFL have the Cardinals, as far as power rankings go, ESPN has them at 20, NFL.com has them at 22, CBS has them at 21, Pro Football Talk has them at the highest at 19. So this is a bottom third team in a lot of people's eyes. I don't want to look past them necessarily, especially with that spread that Las Vegas sees on this game. But this is one of those things where the Packers are going to have to show up. They can't have those up and down moments, and they can't struggle bust their way to another victory because the Cardinals are good enough that they can come away and steal one from the Packers in Lambeau on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think as far as power rankings coming from ESPN and NFL and all that, I think that a big part of that is the defense. Their defense ranks, it was towards the bottom of the list. They allow 360 yards per game, 4.6 yards per carry, rushing the ball for opposing teams. Big one, 72.5 completion percentage this season so far. So 72% of the time when teams are passing against them, the receivers are catching the ball. And they're averaging 8.1 yards per catch. So almost a first down every time a receiver's catching the ball or a pass catcher's catching the ball. So I think a big part of their ranking has to do with their defense, because they do have some weapons on offense. Going back to Kyler Murray, he can ball. We saw it last week against San Francisco. I think a big aspect to his game, you touched on his passer rating and his numbers as far as passing game, but he's also got 247 yards rushing on the year.
Right.
He's rushing about 50 to 60 yards per game. Last week he had 83 yards. He had a big touchdown run against the Niners, so that bulked up his rushing stats to that 83 yards. But his rushing ability is a big aspect of his game, and that's something that the Packers are really going to have to account for. Hitting on Marvin Harrison Jr., you've mentioned, or we mentioned previously, that it almost feels like Murray is forcing the ball to him. Part of that, I think, is because there's not a whole lot of other options for Murray. They've got a young tight end in Trey McBride who has shown some significant talent, but he's been injured. I think he was out in week 4 and then week 5. So this last week against the Niners, he was active, but he didn't play a single snap, which was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Why activate him and not have him play at all? As long as he doesn't have any setbacks, I would expect him to be playing in the game against the Packers. And that's another piece that the Packers are going to have to pay attention to, because he's likely this number 2 option behind Marvin Harrison Jr. James Conner, you mentioned him as well. He's a veteran guy. I mean, he hasn't slowed down at all. They use him as a legit workhorse. He gets all the carries, or most of the carries, and he's still a good runner. So you got to stop the run as well.
Well, to piggyback a little bit there. So piggytail a little bit there.
Piggytail.
So yeah, McBride has most receptions with 20 off of 30 targets. Marvin Harrison is leading the most targets at 35. So not drastically more than McBride on the receiving side. Only has 17 receptions, but he has the most yards at 279. So he's got that big play ability, big play potential. And then Michael Wilson has been another name that's popped up in a lot of articles over the last couple of days. He's second on the team as far as receptions. He's second on the team as far as yards. So he does have, there are players that can step up and perform. But to your point, I think the biggest thing that the Packers are going to have to be mindful of is the scrambling ability. Is probably the most mobile quarterback. It is the most mobile quarterback the Packers have played this season. You look back at Jalen Hurts, he can scramble, but he doesn't do it all that much. He doesn't do it for 80 yards a game very frequently. So this is going to be something for sure where the Packers are going to have to be mindful of the running game, from both the running back and the quarterback. I almost want to go into keys to victory, and maybe I will. So I think for the Packers to try and maintain this offense as best as possible, I'm seeing a lot of a man sort of a defense. I think they essentially rely on those 4 guys up front. They stack the box to an extent. They maybe have a Quay Walker or a Cooper, maybe even a McDuffie to an extent, more of a spy. But then you're really relying on Jair, who I would expect to be back, a possibility this upcoming game, to be kind of that lockdown corner for a young rookie in Harrison Jr. And then you have the rest of your cornerback talent that will kind of thin out the rest of it. But it's really going to just boil down to making sure that they don't have those explosive plays from, on a 3rd and 8 where Murray scrambles and picks up a first down and keeps that drive going. They need to do to the Cardinals what the Rams did to the Packers last week and get them off the field on 3rd and out opportunities as much as possible. It seems pretty obvious. Get the offense off the field, you probably have a pretty good chance of winning the game. But they have that ability, the Cardinals do, to sneak away and pick up those 3rd downs and extend those drives. And they got to get them off the field at the end of the day. Otherwise, it could be a long day. And then you start losing the time of possession and everything else that goes with it. So that's where I see this defense, and the key for the Packers is getting, that solid front out of your 4 guys and your linebackers. You stole it.
No, I
didn't. Did I?
Yeah, you did.
Boy.
Yeah, you did. I think
expand on it then, Christian.
You hit a lot of what my key to victory, or I can go a little bit different route. We talk about X factor, right? A lot of times we're talking about an individual player or a player position as an X factor. The X factor that I had written down for this week's game is Jeff Hafley. I think, to all of your points, he has to be able to dial up a defense that's going to put pressure on Murray Like we talked about previously, we need more pressure from Rashawn Gary, Luke Van Ness, Preston Smith. We need more pressure to see more pressure from them. We need to see more sacks out of them. With Kyler Murray, it's a little bit different situation. You want to put pressure on him because he's going to make mistakes throwing the ball if he's got pressure. But he has that ability to scramble and, exactly like you said, 3rd and 8, scramble for the first down to keep a drive going. So Hafley's got to dial up a defense that puts pressure on him, but also contains Kyler Murray. That was my X factor for this week. But I can go into a little bit different one. It's kind of reiterating what I talked about last week. But Jordan Love, we talked about it a lot. Got to see a little bit better decision making. I think we do. I think, he turned it around in the second half against the Rams. And it's really important this week because this Cardinals defense is so susceptible to the passing attack. They've given up, I believe it's almost 1,200 yards passing so far this season in 5 games.
They've given up 1,800 yards passing in 5 games.
Oh, wow. Are you sure?
That's what it says.
Okay.
That's not total yards given up. They've given up, so 739 rushing yards they've given up this season. And then it just says, it could be total yards. So I guess do the math. That's probably right around 1,100 to 1,200 passing yards. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what I saw. But ultimately, they've given up more passing yards than rushing yards this year. So their pass defense is the more susceptible piece of their defense. So Jordan Love has to be able to take advantage of that. Like I said before, he's got to have a little bit more calmness, confidence, stick to the high percentage throws, stick to the basics. He doesn't have to be the hero. He doesn't have to throw the deep ball into triple coverage, although apparently Jaden Reed can catch it. It doesn't matter if it's triple coverage with Jaden Reed. But yeah, so that's another X factor for me is more growth out of Jordan Love. We saw growth from the first half to the second half in last week's game. Hopefully we just continue to see that growth as, we move into this game and as the season goes on.
Yeah, go ahead and hit that like button and comment down below for just Christian just winging that X factor key to victory after I stole all your thunder. Super impressive. Like just a natural out there, just coming up on the fly.
We've done enough of these now. I got the hang of it, I think. We'll see.
The problem is we think too alike, and we want to say the same stuff, which, shit.
Every single week, I've been much better about preparing ahead of time.
Yeah.
The first few weeks, I like come into it and I'm like, I'll just wing it. I'll be fine. Like, I'll just think of something to say. But I've been much better about preparing. And as I'm preparing, I'm like, oh man, he's not going to say this. There's no way that he's got the same X factor or key to victory as I do. Like, I'm getting outside the box here. Like, nope, every week it's pretty much the exact same thing.
So, well, and you had the stat line right on the passing yards. I tried to steal your thunder, but yeah, I found the column, 1,124 passing yards. So you were like right there. You had that stat geared up and ready to go.
It was a slow day at work today. I had a lot of time to do my research.
I just want to touch real quick on the injury side of things. As I mentioned earlier, we don't, as I always say every week, we don't know what the official injury report's going to look like, but I would expect Alexander probably to be back on Sunday. Christian Watson, not on the injured reserve, but I would not expect to see him suit up on Sunday. It sounds like they're aiming for that Texans game, possibly Jacksonville the following week. Devontae Wyatt did not play on Sunday. I would assume he is maybe a shot of playing on Sunday. It should be nice to get him back. And then Jordan Morgan's that last one again. They have not placed him on injured reserve. He has not played since week 1. Just a super big head scratcher on that front. But we got Carrington Valentine back last week. It was nice to see him out on the field. And Jordan Love isn't probably even going to be on the injury report. I don't think they even had him last week on the injury report. So let's hit the score predictions. As I mentioned, Packers open as 5.5-point favorites. That is insane to me. That's a big spread. But I'm going to take the Packers to win this game by more than 5.5 points. So, had a lot of discussion. This is our longest episode yet when it comes to these final thoughts. But some good conversations, some good topics. I think to your point on your second key to victory there, as far as Jordan Love, I don't think they need to get crazy with this offense this week. I think short little screen passes and slant routes will suffice it enough to come away with moving that ball down the field and having some momentum and gaining some momentum. So I have the Packers. I'll take the Packers 28-17. The Packers defense has been holding these opponents under 20 points. And I think that the offense will continue to kind of grow and jive a little bit. And I'm going to predict four touchdowns out of them, 28-17.
I was just talking about how I
Were you going to do 28-17 too?
No. Hold on. It's even what I was going to say is even better than that. I was just talking about how I'm getting better about preparing for a podcast and researching and taking down notes. I did not write down a score prediction.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I did not write down. Like we started, I looked through
You got me
notes.
your power rankings. You got me your game predictions for week 6. Like I was like, holy cow, he's on top of it this week.
I know. And then I looked at we have shared notes, looking at your notes, and at the bottom it said score predictions. And I was looking at that right before we got on recording, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot to do. And so I'm flying by the seat of my pants on this score prediction here, but I am feeling Packers 34, Cardinals 27. That's just it's my feeling.
That's a lot of points to give up on defense.
It is a lot of points. It is a lot of points. Hopefully it's a lot of garbage time points, right? Packers are out to a 34-point lead at halftime. The rest of it is just the Cardinals scrambling to even have a chance at.
The Packers defense essentially implodes in the second half is what you're predicting there. And then they hang on for a last-minute Hail Mary that falls to the ground incomplete, and they win 34-27. Oh, boy, that sounds just splendid. Well, that's all we got for this episode. The drinks are empty, but we will pour them again in overtime. So thanks for checking out the video. I pray to God that the volume is there, the audio is there, the quality's there. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Be part of the giveaway. I'll get into that in overtime. Until next time, we will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.